It's the all quarterback edition coming up. Matthew Stafford, pick number 6 on a list of best NFL quarterbacks. All it makes you think of what could have been. It's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Travis Rogers. Thanks for checking us out. Click that subscribe button while you're here in the podcast feed. That way you'll get Locked On Rams every single day. And while you're doing that, check us out on YouTube as well. We have a Locked On Rams YouTube channel that you got to check out for yourself. We got some fantastic quarterback stuff to talk about. I want to talk about what could be coming up next for Matthew Stafford. If this is what it looks like after 1 year, what could it look like after a couple of years? And he starts to understand Sean McVay. I have to ask a question that I don't think anybody really wants the answer to. What happens if you have to play a few games without Matthew Stafford? We'll get into the Rams' backup quarterback situation. And let's start right here, okay? Let's start right here. Now, we've got Rams training camp coming up here in just a little bit. Of course, I do the Rams pre- and post-game show on their flagship station, 710 ESPN. And I'm going to be out of training camp here coming up before too long. And we'll get to see Matthew Stafford and everybody else out there. Now, how much he throws with the elbow injury, well, time will tell, and his health will dictate a great part of that. But as we like to do here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and likely like to do on a lot of outlets, is you're talking about rankings. You're talking about who's the best, who's the top 5, who's the top 3, who's number 1, top 10, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the people at ESPN polled players, executives, coaches about who is the best quarterback in the NFL. And I guess really not surprisingly, Aaron Rodgers was ranked number 1. Aaron Rodgers is terrific. Aaron Rodgers is a multiple-time MVP winner. He's a back-to-back MVP winner, and he makes some throws and decisions that are just, they're better than everybody else. So not a huge problem with Aaron Rodgers being there. The other guys inside the top 5 are Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, who am I forgetting here? Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Josh Allen, of course, is one of those guys as well. So, and then you have Joe Burrow rounding out the top 5. Matthew Stafford checks in just outside the top 5 at number 6. He was number 6 last year, okay, coming into the season, and he was looked at as a guy that was really talented and able to do a lot of things, but maybe not a guy who had done it a lot in the postseason, a guy that had that long resume of success after the regular season was over. Fair enough. What are we doing now? And by the way, let me start right here. I don't have a huge problem with him being at number 6. Those 5 guys ahead of him are all terrific players. The Joe Burrow part of it maybe feels a little bit premature and maybe a little reactionary to the success that the Bengals had last year. And look, I think Joe Burrow's terrific. I think that he and Jamar Chase and what they got going on in Cincinnati is very sustainable. Is he better than Matthew Stafford? I don't know. He's had more success early in his career, and that's kind of what I want to get into about Stafford right here. Because when you see what he was able to do in 1 year with a functioning organization, he's 1 for 1. Aaron Rodgers has been in Green Bay, and let's not talk about his first few years where he's backing up Brett Favre. But since Aaron Rodgers has become the guy in Green Bay, he's been surrounded by competence. He's been surrounded by good players. He's been surrounded by functional management. I'm not saying they don't make mistakes and do things that maybe rub him the wrong way a little bit, but he's not in Detroit. Okay, he's not in Dallas. He's not in a place like the New York Jets or the Cleveland Browns where it's just incompetence over and over and over again. The Detroit Lions fall into that category. So Aaron Rodgers is there. And you look at Patrick Mahomes, who's had Andy Reid his whole career. You look at Josh Allen, who's a special talent, but has been surrounded by basic competence since he's come into the league. Joe Burrow, maybe is a slightly different thing. Then Tom Brady, forget about it. We don't even need to talk about him. What would this have looked like for Matthew Stafford if he comes into the league and doesn't go to Detroit or Cleveland or one of these other teams like the New York Jets? What if he goes to a team like, I don't know, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Green Bay Packers, the New England Patriots, a team that just has a basic level of functionality. The Seattle Seahawks with Pete Carroll, right? They've been incredibly functional since he's come into the since he went to Seattle. When you see this, when he goes 1-for-1 with the Rams, it's not just that he all of a sudden the light goes on. It's like, oh, okay, don't throw it over here, throw it over there. Oh, okay, we're going to make this decision instead of that. No, he's the players that he played with were not of NFL caliber across the board the way they have been in other places. And more importantly than that, he never had a coaching staff, a support system that has done for him what Sean McVay has done for him, which is basically put him in a position to succeed. He's the one that made the no-look pass in the Super Bowl. There's in the piece in ESPN, you should go read it, talking about this. It's that, yes, that no-look pass was as good as you think it was. This wasn't just a scheme. This wasn't just something that, oh, I'll look left, throw right. Or actually it was look left, look right, throw left. But the point is, that is a special play made by a special player. For sure it is. But to be in a position to make that play in a big game, in front of a Super Bowl crowd, with the entire world watching, that's because the Rams are good. And he was able to rise and to elevate his game to that point. This was not, well, he's got a great arm. He's always had a great arm. This was not, well, he can do some things. He's a much better athlete than, well, he always has been. He's finally surrounded by some competence. And here he is 10 plus years into his career. And he goes 1-for-1. What in the world would that have looked like if he showed up a long time? What if he would have spoken up earlier and said, you know what, I've tried here, man. This doesn't work. And I'm not talking about a Kevin Durant situation where the second you get a play, I don't like it here anymore. Move me to he gave it a nice long run there. And then, in the most respectful, honorable way possible, he said, listen, guys, I'm sorry, I got to go somewhere else. And they kind of got it. And the city of Detroit still loves him, et cetera, et cetera. It's fine. What would it have looked like had he gone somewhere? Do you think he's sixth on this list if he lands in with Sean McVay early in his career? And I know Sean McVay was in high school when he started his career. I understand the math, right? But what I'm saying is, what if it's not Sean McVay? What if it's another very competent NFL head coach? What if it's Andy Reid? What if it's Mike Tomlin? What if it's Pete Carroll? What if it's a guy like that? Somebody who just gets NFL football, who knows how it works. What does his career look like? I can tell you this. He's not sitting at 6 right now. I don't think he's Tom Brady. I don't think he's Aaron Rodgers. But I don't know how much further down the list we're getting before we're talking about him. We're probably talking about him the way we were talking about Russell Wilson a couple of years ago. Not just good, but wait a second. Are we sure we're giving him enough credit? Because 1-for-1 with a real coach and a real organization, that's not just really good luck. It's a little bit of good luck, but it's a great player being surrounded by basic competency in an organization. And by the way, I know that sounds like a low bar to clear. It's not. It's the highest bar in the NFL to clear, basic competency. And Sean McVay has brought that to this organization. And Matthew Stafford, while ranked number 6, has thrived under it. He doesn't go there. He is a perennial top 2, top 3 guy. Maybe not Brady, maybe not Rodgers, but we might be talking about him in Patrick Mahomes category. I really, truly believe that. Okay, so not in the Patrick Mahomes category are the Rams' backup quarterbacks. Here's a question no one really wants to find out the answer to. Are the Rams good enough if they have to play without Matthew Stafford for a handful of games? That's coming up next. But first, let's talk about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And don't forget to go check out some Dodger odds along the way. I'm just saying that they have the best record in the National League, and half their guys are under. You go and find it out for yourself. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports teams and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Hey, which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available June 18th on the Locked On NFL Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, so here's the question that all 32 NFL teams, well, maybe not 32, maybe there's a few teams at the bottom of the rankings that maybe wouldn't mind seeing the second guy come in, but here's the question that the vast majority of the 32 teams in the NFL hope to never find out the answer to. Is my backup quarterback good enough? Is the guy that backs up the guy good enough to keep this thing running till the guy gets back, right? And in the Rams case, we're talking about John Wolford and we're talking about Bryce Perkins. And again, let's just kind of quantify what exactly it is that we're talking about. If you lose your start, if you're a team like the Rams and you have Super Bowl aspirations, and throw the other team, the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens and the Chiefs and the Chargers and put the Denver Broncos in there and the Packers and the Buccaneers and all of the, you know who they are, right? Can we continue our push towards a Super Bowl championship if our quarterback misses time? If they're down for the year, it's basically a wrap. Never say never. There's a Jeff Hostetler situation. There's a Nick Foles situation. It does happen occasionally, but not very often. If your starter goes down for the season, you could probably start looking forward to next season. But there are other scenarios where maybe it's a knee, maybe it's something that will heal, a broken rib for something. Maybe you're going to miss a month, maybe you can miss 6 weeks, right? But it's going to heal and you're going to come back and you're going to get your guy. Can your backup keep you in a position to continue to win games, or perhaps even more importantly, not lose games? And I think the Rams have a really interesting question there because Matthew Stafford, obviously, like we just talked about, is not just a good quarterback. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and has proven that over the course of last season. Do they have somebody, if let's say Matthew Stafford's elbow flares up again and he needs a couple of weeks to kind of let it settle down a little bit, can John Wolford come in and win a couple of games? He's got to, let's just use for the sake of this argument, a month. You got to play games for a month without your guy. Is Wolford up for it? Is Bryce Perkins up for it? Because those are the two guys that the Rams carried on their roster last year. Now, whether or not they carry 3 quarterbacks this year, I think is a really interesting question. They may not. They did not want Bryce Perkins to end up somewhere else. They saw something in him that made them decide they wanted to keep him as a part of their regular roster. Not all NFL teams carry 3 guys. They'll have a guy in there that can do, throw passes and practice and stuff, but not a guy that's going to take a roster spot because that's one less offensive lineman, defensive lineman, linebacker, secondary player, special team, or whatever it might be that you can't carry because you're playing a third quarterback who more than likely and hopefully never has to play. Here's again, and I know this is something that we talk about on Locked On Rams a lot. This is why you got to click that subscribe button in your podcast feed. This is where Sean McVay's genius becomes so important. Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback and can do great things, and you put him together with a genius head coach like Sean McVay, and you got a chance to win the Super Bowl. Okay, we saw that. What Sean McVay's greatness allows people to do that I think goes a little bit underappreciated is that he can take a guy who's a guy, no disrespect, like Jared Goff, and make them not just okay, but maybe a little bit better than okay. If I get it, Jared Goff is the number 1 pick in the draft. He has certain skills and tools that John Wolford and Bryce Perkins do not. The reason that they're not getting opportunities like Jared Goff is because they don't have the raw materials. That being said, Sean McVay played a regular season game with John Wolford and was going into a playoff game to use him again against Seattle. And it's a playoff game. You got to win those games. And he went with Wolford, even though Jared Goff said he could play, and it turns out he could because he ended up winning the game when Wolford got hurt. But I think that speaks to McVay's confidence in Wolford. I think that speaks to Wolford's ability to keep it going, right? And is he going to go out there and throw for 400 yards and light it up for 5 touchdowns like Matthew Stafford can? No. Can he win a game? Yeah. I think we've seen it. And we haven't seen a lot of it, and that's both really good news because it means that Matthew Stafford's been healthy, and it's a little scary because let's say, look, the Rams were they were in control of their playoff destiny really the entire season. I know they had the bad November and they couldn't get anything going, but it never felt like they were going to miss the playoffs. But let's just say that you get into a situation where you're hovering around 500, unlikely, but not impossible. And all of a sudden, Matthew Stafford goes down. You got a couple of games you got to win. I believe that Sean McVay believes that he can win with John Wolford, that he can win even with Bryce Perkins. There's a reason they kept him around. These are not, classic back. Like you think about this, you think about what's going on in Carolina. They just made a play for Baker Mayfield, and Mayfield and Sam Darnold are going to battle it out, and one of those guys is going to be the backup, and that's probably the best case scenario of an NFL backup, a former starter who has proven that, maybe they're not going to win 10 or 12 games, but they can run an NFL team. You look at a place like Pittsburgh, they got Mason Rudolph, who, he's not very good, but he's been a starter in this league. You go and get Mitch Trubisky. He's not very good, but he's been a starter in this league. One of those guys is going to be the backup of this team. Perkins and Wolford really haven't had that luxury of having multiple starts in the NFL. But I don't know if it matters that much. Look, hopefully this is a question that no one ever really has to answer because Matthew Stafford is ready to go. But again, I feel like because Sean McVay trusts John Wolford, I trust John Wolford. If he didn't like it, he would have gone out and got another guy. That they brought him back. Now, they didn't sink a lot of money in him. It's just less than $1 million. But if he likes it, I love it, right? That's kind of the line. If you like it, I love it. And if Sean McVay likes it, I really love it. So I'm okay with where the Rams are backup quarterback-wise. Hopefully we never have to find out. Hopefully Matthew Stafford is healthy as a horse all season long. Okay, so speaking of the all-quarterback edition of Locked On Rams, what could year 2 look like with Matthew Stafford having not just a season, but a championship season under his belt? That's coming up next. Talk about our pals at Rock Auto. The next time you're on the freeway, if you're here in LA like I am, I spent a lot of time on the freeway. Look around. Look at how many cars there are. And I'm not just talking about the amount of cars, the different types of cars, the different makes, the different models. It's impossible for your local chain store of auto parts to have everything that you might need. And why go through the entire exercise of going in there and asking, and they're not really being that helpful, and they're not trying to make you feel great about the whole process. You have computers, right? You have a phone. Go to rockauto.com and get exactly what you need. You can save time and you can save money when you use Rock Auto. 30%, 50%, even 100% for the same part from a chain store or a dealership. For instance, Honda Odyssey, right? $353 for a fuel pump from a chain store. Not at Rock Auto, $216. It's a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Always reliably low prices for every single customer. Go online right now. Use their easy website to find the solution for your auto part needs. All right, here's how you do it. You go to rockauto.com right now. You see all the parts available for your car or truck, and you write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you over there. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car could ever need. rockauto.com. Okay, so let's start with, or I should say, let's end with some good news along the way. Because if we're talking about backup quarterbacks in the last part of the pod, that's obviously a situation that nobody really hopes comes to reality. Let's talk about something that we really do hope kind of shakes out the way that we'd like it to. And that is year 2 of Matthew Stafford. He was on the Behind the Grind podcast, and he said something that I think is really interesting, very true and obvious, but also incredibly exciting about what might be coming up next for this team. He said, at this point of the season last year, I think to myself what I knew about this team and this offense, and it's just so small in comparison to what I feel like I know and understand now. So that gives me great comfort in the fact that we can go above and beyond what we did last year. Okay, so let's kind of jump into that. I don't know how you go above and beyond that as far as results go. You're the Super Bowl champion, and the reason you are the Super Bowl champion is because you played at a level that the Rams were not capable of getting to before. You made plays against Tampa, against San Francisco, and certainly against Cincinnati that the previous guy was incapable of doing. So above and beyond, how about just we get to the same spot again? That would be an incredible accomplishment. That being said, I think he's right? And I want to read you another quote about this because I think this is something that if you've changed jobs or moved to a different city, we all like to think that we're kind of resilient, but let me read this to you. It says, this is Matthew Stafford on the same pod. Los Angeles has been amazing. LA has been a new home for me and my family. The biggest adjustment is probably just being a little bit uncomfortable. I was in the same place with the same people for 12 years, moved my family across the country, had to meet new friends, meet new teammates, new coaches, people in the building. There was obviously an adjustment period to just being comfortable in my surroundings. Okay, so, excuse me, if you've moved, if you've changed jobs, if you've moved to a new city, and especially if you've been in one job or one place for a long time, you can go in and you can figure out where the coffee pot is, and you can figure out how the workflow is, and you got to get your orders in, or you got to complete passes, or whatever it is you do for a living. But you don't feel comfortable right away. You don't feel like you can fully execute everything it is that you're there to execute for a period of time. And if you're really lucky, that period of time may be a few months. And if you're maybe not quite as fortunate, it might take a little bit longer than that. It could take the better part of a year. Now, Matthew Stafford obviously was pretty darn comfortable coming in because they ended up winning the Super Bowl. He looked great from day one. And other than, like we talked about a minute ago, that lull in November where he was throwing pick sixes and the Rams couldn't figure anything out. But, it's the NFL. It happens occasionally, unfortunately. He looked pretty darn good. That being said, of course he's going to be more comfortable this year. Of course he's going to understand the offense. It's like, especially in football, it's like learning a new language. I can speak it. Yeah, I can understand it if you give me a second to kind of think, okay, what is it? Yeah, okay, that means that. Okay, I can do it, and I can order dinner in a restaurant. That's another thing, but that you kind of get, but it's not like sitting around and shooting the breeze. It's not like having a few beers and telling stories in a different language. That takes some time to understand how to do that. And I feel like that's kind of where he is. He had basic competency for sure. And I mean, they won the Super Bowl. But how maybe that lull isn't coming. Maybe you don't find yourself in those same predicaments. Maybe you find, or even if you do, you find your way out of them a little more quickly because the comfort level with your surroundings, with the offense, with your teammates, with your coaches. Look, think about the year 1 to year 2 with Jared Goff and Sean McVay, and it was whoop. And obviously it's different because Goff was a younger player. McVay was still kind of had some training wheels on with him that I don't think that he has on with Matthew Stafford, just because Stafford's been in the league for as long as he has. But it's going to be better. I know my way around the track. I know how this works. I know the building. I know my teammates. And I really can say, hey, to Sean McVay, hey, I don't like this. This doesn't really work for me. Or, hey, I really do like this. Let's find a way to do this more often. And that communication is better. And just the comfort level. I don't care what it is that you do. If you've been doing it for a while, a year or two, or, in the new place for a year or so, of course you're going to be better. So put all these things together. The Rams have added some new players. It's going to take a little time, but the core of this team is still very much intact. You've got the same head coach. You've got the same quarterback. You've got the same number 1 wide receiver in Cooper Kupp. You've got Aaron Donald that's still over there doing his thing. You've got Jalen Ramsey who's still over there doing his thing. There's a couple of pieces on the offensive line that have moved, but Van Jefferson is back. Tyler Higbee, like all the nuts and bolts of this team are largely returning for another season. And then you got a guy who was the quote unquote new guy who's not the new guy anymore. And look, he clearly came in with a sense of ownership. This was not a guy that's tiptoeing through it and trying to figure out what's happening. He took full ownership of this from the jump. But boy, oh boy, what will that look like in year number 2? Look, you don't have to go above and beyond, like he said, because I don't know what above and beyond the Super Bowl championship is. Let's just run it back all over again, like Sean McVay suggested. Okay, we're going to talk a lot about Jalen Ramsey tomorrow in the little Twitter storm that he kicked up yesterday. That's going to come up on the next edition of Locked On Rams. Until then, thanks for making your first listen. Now make your second listen, the Locked On NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keeping you dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, because an offseason does not equal a break in the action. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.